Hello, welcome back to episode 10 of our podcast. Can't believe we've been doing this for 10 whole weeks, but today we're coming with you with a new series. We don't really have a name for it, but if you have a good idea, please DM us on Instagram at First Gen Failures. We'd love to hear your input. But so we're thinking of doing this new series where we address this thing that you often hear about on social media, but that you don't really know much about. Pretty much just global events that you know of, but you're not, you don't have the details about it, or you don't know much context or history on it. You know, we hear about a lot of these things going on in the world, and we hear that we need to help it, or help the problem and make it better, but we don't really know how to do that because we don't really know what the problem is. We just want to help you guys and us also understand the things that we are meant to, advocate for, help make better in the world and stuff. So yeah, today we are going to be discussing the Yemeni Crisis.
Me personally, when I saw these posts or people talking about it on their Instagram stories, I'd read it, but these posts wouldn't be too detailed. So obviously I knew that people of Yemen were being killed, that children were going to school, and that there were no resources, clean resources. But that's really all I knew. But when me and Eileen talked about it, we were like, okay, there's so much more to this story, and we realized there's a lot of learning we could do. So
we obviously are aware that the Middle East is not a very turmoil-free place, but we knew that there was a humanitarian crisis in Yemen, but we just wanted to know more about it. So we bring you guys this episode just to help teach ourselves and you guys about this. So we're going to go a little bit into the history of it. This is kind of we're not going to make it any too boring, I guess. We're just going to tell you how Yemen has gotten to this point in its history and the current crisis at hand, and different ways that we can help out, because it really is the world's largest humanitarian crisis, and we really should be doing something to help out.
So the struggle in Yemen has economic, political, and religious bases, especially among the two major branches of Islam, the Sunni and Shia. Side note, the Yemen's population is about 55% Sunni and 45% Shia, which is important for later.
Yeah, a lot of the conflict in the Middle East has a lot to do with religion, especially in Islam itself, or among Muslims and Jews, and just a lot of religious turmoil. And the split between the Sunni and the Shia is very old. It has to do with who would be the next imam. I'm pretty sure just a while ago, well, yeah, a long while ago, they had this argument, and now we have these two different sects of Islam. In the world, 85% of Muslims are Sunni and 15% of Muslims are Shia. So in the world, the Shia Muslims are quite the minority. But in Yemen, it's about 55-45 split. So 55 Sunni, 45 Shia.
Yeah. So the start off is a little rebellion or revolution, and it was inspired by the Arab Spring. The people of Yemen led a 2011 to 2012 revolution against the president, who is Ali Abdullah Saleh, after he led Yemen for 33 years.
So just a little background on the Arab Spring. Around in the early 2010s, a lot of countries in the Middle East ended up having revolutions of the sort, and Yemen was no exception. So that was kind of inspired by that kind of big event in history. You can obviously read more about that. We might have some resources in the description if you want to know more about the Arab Spring and about a lot of the different things that we talk about in this episode, by the way. But yeah.
After President Ali Abdullah Saleh was very unpopular with the people, he quietly handed off his power to Vice President Houthi, who struggled to unite the many political factions in Yemen. One of them being the Houthi fighters from northern Yemen, Al-Qaeda from Saudi Arabia, and everyone was really split not only by religion, but also by different political interests. The Houthi militant fighters are Shia Muslims, and they wanted to take over Yemen. They were also backed by the Shia state of Iran for political and, religious purposes, and Hadi's government was backed by the Sunni kingdom of Saudi Arabia, which is one of the biggest Middle Eastern powers.
We know that there's this big Yemeni crisis going on, but you need to understand that there's a little backdrop to all of this. There's been a proxy war going on in the Middle East between Saudi Arabia and Iran, and if you don't know what a proxy war is, it's kind of like a mini Cold War. So the countries themselves are not at war. They're just using economic and political power in like other countries to kind of fight for power in a region, pretty much. So Saudi Arabia and Iran have had a very long struggle for power over the Middle East. But instead of it being communist versus capitalists, it's Sunni Muslims in Saudi Arabia versus the Shia Muslims in Iran. That's definitely a long story for a different day, but just to understand why these different countries are backing these different groups, that's kind of important. So Iran is backing the Houthi militant fighters, and Saudi Arabia is backing the Sunni government of Hadi.
Moving along the timeline, in 2014, the Houthi rebels took the capital of Yemen, which is Sana'a. The year after, Saudi Arabia, which is the ally of Hadi, blamed Iran, the ally of the Houthi rebels, for supporting the Houthi. And in response, Saudi Arabia led an airstrike aiming to get the Hadi back in power, which set off a civil war that is going on today.
Officially, Hadi is still the president of Yemen, but this kind of just set it off. So whenever Saudi Arabia and Iran feel around and realize that there's a little bit of political unrest in a country, they tend to pounce on that country, and that was definitely the case with Yemen, and that is a big reason as to why there is a civil war there today. So now we're going to move on to the actual conflict. So that's some of the history, but now what is really happening there? So the Houthis have repeatedly been able to launch ballistic missile and drone attacks on Saudi Arabia from Yemen. And although they have taken responsibility for the attacks, fingers have also been pointed at Iran, making the whole situation very unclear about like who did what, who tried to attack who. So it's just very like, to understand the situation, you need to know that it's very convoluted. Everybody's involved in everything. There's a lot of different moving pieces at play. Militants from Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula have taken advantage of this chaos that's happening by seizing territory in the south and carrying out more deadly attacks. So now we have all these different forces at play. We have the Houthis, we have Hadi's government, we have Al-Qaeda, as well as the different nations that back these militant groups. In 2017, Saleh was killed in a struggle over Sana'a's biggest mosque. He was known for switching and forging alliances very frequently. So just a few days before his death, he had denounced the Houthis, which contradicted what he'd said a while before that, and then he got killed. So during this time, around in 2017, a lot of people of Yemen still hoped that Saleh would have like a little trick up his sleeve to kind of end the conflict, even though he wasn't president anymore. But he did get killed in the struggle, so there was another piece of hope just gone for the Yemeni people.
In June 2018, the coalition, which is Saudi Arabia and Hadi's government, tried to capture the city of Hudaydah, sorry if I didn't say that right, which is the port of the Red Sea. This is really essential. It's a strategic war play because that port supplies over 2/3 of the population of Yemen. So by capturing it, they have control over the population, which means they probably have control over the government.
Beyond this point, there are just so many different interlocking parts, such as the UN, the Saudi-led coalition, the United Arab Emirates. These pieces all get involved. Overall, a very messy situation has led to the world's worst humanitarian crisis. So a big question that I had while I was looking up the history of the Yemeni crisis is, why are there so many different nations involved? Well, it turns out there are religious, geographic, and economic reasons. For the religious reasons, we've already been over them, right? So it's the Sunni Muslims versus the Shia Muslims. But there are also geographic and economic reasons.
If you look at a map, Yemen is on the Persian Gulf, and most people know that Middle Eastern region is a hotspot for oil. Saudi Arabia is really big on it, and Yemen too. They have big ports, which means they can trade oil.
The next question, what is the human cost of this crisis? Well, you've definitely heard the numbers, and they are definitely really bad, but we just want to put into perspective just how awful this humanitarian crisis is. Because if you remember correctly from the beginning of the podcast, this is the worst humanitarian crisis the world has ever seen. The human cost has recorded 100,000 fatalities, and those are just the recorded ones. This includes 12,000 just plain civilians, not even fighters. So many children. 24 million plus people are currently in need of humanitarian assistance.
10.2 million children don't have access to basic health care and are at risk of severe acute malnutrition, COVID, desert locusts, cholera.
Coronavirus has definitely severely exacerbated the current situation, putting 7.8 million kids out of school compared to that 2 million before Corona. We do understand that like coronavirus is hitting America like really hard, and it's hit a lot of developed countries really hard. But we really need to think about how badly it's hitting a lot of the developing countries, especially those that are literally going through the world's worst humanitarian crisis right now. More than half of the country is on the brink of starvation as food is diminishing. The economy has been collapsing, obviously, because there's nobody in power. But Yemen has also experienced a very large cholera epidemic, the largest in the world. And 25% of the people that have died from this cholera were kids. The thing about cholera is that it's not
So easily treatable.
It's pretty easily treatable. It's not like a very expensive treatment plan like cancer or HIV or anything like that. Like it's pretty easy to solve with better sanitation systems and a little bit of salination, but that's not possible in Yemen because of the current situation. And if you know anything about cholera and the way that it affects the human body, it is a brutal disease if you die from it. I mean, it's nothing anybody would ever want to go through. It is excruciating. And just know that on top of all of these health issues that are currently swarming the country, many Yemenis are internally displaced and refugees at the moment. Over, I think, 5 million people have had to move around the country and leave and try to escape the horrid violence that's occurring in this country right now. And we need to open our doors and we need to help these people as much as we can.
Now, Eileen, I want to ask, what are some ways that you can help?
Side note, we are going to have a lot of these links down in the description. If you hear an organization that you trust and that you'd want to donate money to, just know that they're in the description. But these are the 3 that we trust the most. The UN has a couple websites for this. They have unrefugees.org if you specifically want to help the Yemenis that are looking for refugee status in neighboring countries, and the World Food Program under the United Nations if you'd like to help more for the starvation aspect. You can also donate money to Doctors Without Borders at msf.org/Yemen, and they aim to provide free healthcare as much as they can in their 13 sites, I believe, in Yemen that they're currently situated in. And obviously UNICEF, if you are really feeling for those kids, unicefusa.org will definitely be a big help, as well as savethechildren.org, which is not affiliated with UNICEF, but those two are both huge for helping children. So those are our resources for how you can help, because really the only thing that works is money. There's no petitions that you can sign because there's no government to take them into consideration. Please try to provide humanitarian aid to these Yemenis so that they can live.
Yeah. For the Yemen crisis, that is all we have for today. We really encourage you to donate and, educate yourself about these things, because even if you can't donate, educating yourself is one of the best things you can do. We've said multiple times, it is one of the best things you can do to make a long-term impact.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for listening to this episode. We do know that it was a bit shorter. Let us know, do you want us to delve more into the history, more how you can help? Like, what aspect would you want to hear more of? What different crises would you want to hear more about? I know it's not a very happy topic, but it's something that we definitely do need to talk about. So feel free to DM us, let us know. Just make sure to follow us on Instagram at FirstGenFailures. If you did like our podcast, please consider rating us on Apple Podcasts. Remember that you can find us on any of your podcast platforms. We are available on practically all of them, as well as YouTube if you don't have access to any of those platforms. And we really enjoyed speaking with you today. It was great fun. Thank you so much for talking to me, Trisha, about this awful, horrid subject, but it had to be talked about.
Of course. Have a great day. Peace out.